Okay, I welcome you to this made to story, and it's meant to be taken just as fiction. It doesn't contradict the Word of God in any way, shape, or form, because we don't know and the future of these individuals. And I'm talking about Pontius Pilate, who was the Roman governor who uh, turned Jesus over to be crucified. And in this fictional story, it takes place at the end of his life, where he calls out to God for mercy, for salvation. Now, is that possible? You know, we see stories like The Chosen, and, you know, which takes creative license to ask the question, is it possible maybe this could occur or that? And things like that can be fine as long as it doesn't go against doctrine, and as long as it doesn't teach something and claim to be an absolute that this happened. Some things are just for possible entertainment to ask the question, is it possible this could have happened at the end of Pilate's life? We know that God was endeavoring to reach Pilate and his wife, because Pilate's wife had a dream, and in the dream, in the time of the trial of Jesus, she had a dream the night before, said, have nothing to do with that just man. In other words, it was like the Lord was revealing to that couple, this is bigger than you think. This needs to be taken seriously, what you're doing. This isn't just a mere man. There's something supernatural here involved. And later, when he heard that Jesus was said that Jesus was the Son of God, that he was claiming to be a king from another world, that possibly did make an impact. We know that Pilate really wanted to let Jesus go free. Thing about in the story, in real life of the Roman occupation, one must understand is that it's not quite like you see in Jesus movies that Hollywood makes, that the Roman soldiers were just there in massive numbers. They were at certain times. In 70 A.D., Titus, leader of the Roman armies of the legions, he came and with massive number of troops and destroyed Jerusalem, and the Jews were scattered from that point on. That happened in 70 A.D. But in the time of the occupation, when Pilate was governor, they had a limited amount of troops there, and he was always under stress about quelling down a rebellion, and sometimes the number of backup troops they actually had was like a token. So to stand against the Jewish leaders and to have bravery and courage, where things would go fine if he contradicted them, wasn't quite like that. There was an element of fear and concern that if word got back from the religious leaders to Caesar that this Pilate, he backed up somebody who called himself a king, and that would possibly cause him to be called back from to Rome to give answer to that. History says, in truth, that Pilate was called back and had to give answer to some other type of problems, and they're not quite sure in true history what actually happened to Pilate his latter days. But he was a true historical figure. There's no doubt about that. That's even in the Roman records. But this is just meant to be an entertainment piece, and we ask the question, is it possible something like this could have happened? I think possible. Perhaps not, but enjoy the story. Anyway you look at it, it will provide hope for those who feel they need their sins forgiven. Okay, it was the spring of AD, the year 52. The oil lamp guttered in its clay bowl, throwing trembling shadows across the low ceiling. Outside, the Rhone River murmured in the darkness, indifferent to the small drama unfolding inside the modest stone villa. Pontius Pilate lay on a narrow bed. He was elderly now, his body a shadow of the stern prefect who once ruled Judea. The man who had faced down crowds and emperors now looked small and fragile and afraid. Claudia, his wife, sat beside him, her hand never leaving his. 20 years had silvered her hair and etched fine lines around her eyes, but her touch remained gentle and steady. The same hand that had once reached across the judgment hall to warn him in a dream. Pontius, she whispered, leaning close so he could hear over the rattle in his lungs. Can you feel my hand? I'm here. I have always been here. His eyes, still sharp beneath his hooded lips, filled slowly. He sat up. A single tear escaped and traced a path down his face into his beard. Claudia, I'm afraid. I'm so terribly afraid. Not of death itself, but of what waits beyond it. I condemned the Son of God. I washed my hands in front of them all, and still the blood will not come off. She lifted his trembling fingers to her lips and kissed them. Then let me remind you of the words of the very one you sent to the cross. Listen, my love, as I read them again. From the small wooden box beside the bed, she drew the worn scroll. A precious copy of the accounts gathered by Luke, carried across the sea by a merchant who had once broken bread with the disciples. Her voice, though weary from long vigils, grew warm and clear. I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall not hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. You are hungry now, Pontius. Your soul has starved for years. Now come to him. Pilate's breast hitched. I can see the morning they brought him to me, beaten and silent. They called him King of the Jews. I asked him, are you a king? And he spoke of a kingdom not of this world. Then I asked him, what is truth? He looked straight into my soul and gave no answer, because he was the answer. Claudia nodded, tears glistening on her lashes. Yes. And he said more. I am the light of the world, he said. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but he will have the light of life. Remember the darkness that fell at midday when he was on the cross? The sun hid its face for 3 hours, as though creation itself mourned. Yet he was the light that darkness could never overcome. A sob tore from Pilate's throat. The centurion, that rough soldier, looked up at the cross when it was finished and cried out, "Surely this man was the Son of God." I heard him. I knew it right in my bones, and I still let the crowd have their way. I offered them Barabbas, the murderer, a rebel, and they chose him over the innocent one. Barabbas walked free into the sunlight while Jesus carried his cross up the hill. Claudius' voice softened with fierce tenderness. "Then hear this truth, my husband. You can be the new Barabbas. The same mercy that let a guilty man go free that day can set you free now. The blood that flowed from his hands and feet was poured out for guilty men like you and like me." She turned the scroll with trembling fingers. "I am the door," Jesus said. "If anyone enters by me, he will be saved." You stood at the judgment seat that terrible morning. Now he stands at the door of your heart waiting. Knock, Pontius, he will open. Pilate's face twisted with the memory of it. The crown of thorns, the purple robe, the soldiers spitting on him, and the woman, Mary Magdalene, among them, stood near the cross when most of the men had fled. She had been tormented by 7 demons, yet he set her free. She watched him die, and later she was the first to see him alive. Even she found mercy. Why should I? Because he's the good shepherd, Claudia answered, her own tears falling freely now. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He laid it down willingly for the soldiers who nailed him, for the crowd that shouted, "Crucify," for the governor who washed his hands, for you. She paused, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, then continued, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And I am the true vine, you are the branches. Abide in me. Stay with him now, beloved. Do not let go at the end." Pilate's chest heaved with a silent weeping. The earthquake, the torn curtain in the temple. I heard the reports later. The whole creation groaned, and I tried to forget, but I never could. Claudia set the scroll aside and took both of his hands in hers. She bowed her head and prayed aloud the simple, desperate words of the thief who had hung beside the Savior. "Jesus, remember my husband when you come into your kingdom. He was weak that day, he was afraid, but he sees you now. Remember him, Lord, as you remembered that thief." And Claudia said to Pilate, "You remember what Jesus said, 'Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.'" You were put in a very difficult spot, Pilate. You were under a lot of pressure. But Jesus said, "Father, forgive them." He said, "God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son." He gave him for you too, Pilate. A long, shuddering breath escaped Pilate. "Tell me again about the road to Emmaus," he answered. "The one of the travelers spoke of last fall." Claudia smiled through her tears. 2 broken disciples walked away from Jerusalem. Hearts were crushed and eyes blind with sorrow. A stranger joined them on the road. He listened to their griefs and opened the scriptures. Moses, the prophets, the Psalms, showing how the Messiah had to suffer and then enter his glory. At the table he took bread, blessed it, and broke it, and their eyes were opened. They knew him at last. He vanished from their sight, but their hearts burned from within them. Even at the very end, Jesus opened blind eyes. He can open your eyes tonight, Pontius. I feel it, he breathed. The way, the truth, and the life. Yes, Jesus is truth. Forgive my sins, Jesus. Come into my life. I asked him what truth was, Pilate said to Claudia, and all along truth was standing in front of me. She leaned closer, her cheek resting against his, and began to repeat the promise like a lullaby, rocking gently as a mother soothes a frightened child. Today you will be with me in paradise. Today you will be with me in paradise. Over and over the words flowed, soft and steady, until Pilate's ragged breathing began to calm. Put the best robe on him, kill the fatted calf, welcome him home without a single reproach. Yes, Claudia whispered, her voice breaking, you are that son, that prodigal son tonight, Pontius. The Father has been running toward you for 20 years. He's waiting with open arms. Pilate's eyes, wet with tears, suddenly widened with awe. I see him, Claudia, at the right hand of the Father, just as Stephen saw before the stones fell. He is not angry. He's smiling. He's holding out his hands with the scars. A peaceful stillness settled over the room. The lamp burned low. Pilate's grip on her fingers loosened, not in fear, in release. He murmured one last time, tell anyone who will listen, I finally knew the truth. His chest rose once, twice, and then fell still. Claudia remained beside him until dawn painted the hills in a soft gold. She closed his eyes with gentle fingers and kissed his forehead and whispered, go in peace, my love. You are forgiven. Later that morning, in a small garden behind the villa, beneath the young olive tree they had planted together years earlier, she knelt and placed a smooth river stone at the head of the fresh earth. With a stylus she had carved two simple words, forgiven. The wind moved softly through the leaves, carrying the scent of thyme and distant wildflowers. Claudia arose slowly, tears still tracing silent paths down her cheeks, not only tears of sorrow, but of profound, hard-won joy. Somewhere beyond the veil, the one who had declared, I am the way, the truth, and the life, welcomed home the broken governor who had once asked, what is truth? And at the very end received the answer in full.